Tumblr, it's Laura. Welcome to my second summer young adult book review video. I am working my way through the list of Prince Award winners in the interest of finding new cool young adult writers so that I can make great book recommendations to my students. So last week I recorded my first review video on a book called Jellicoe Road. So if you want to watch that one, just scroll down. And this week my review video is on a book called Where Things Come Back by John Corey Whaley. This is his debut novel, and it was actually the Prince Award winner for 2012. I had read a lot of great things about it. It kept popping up in my Amazon recommended books. They're so sneaky and so convincing. So I decided I should probably go ahead and read it. So just like my previous video, I'm going to do three things. First, quick plot overview, just to give you an idea of the subject matter of the book. Then I will talk a little bit about a few things that you could use the book to teach. If you wanted to use parts of it in your classroom, either as independent reading or portions of it to teach stylistic techniques or structure or thematic questions that are brought up by the story. And then most importantly, at the end, I will talk about what kinds of students I think this book would appeal to. So again, you can make those really good book recommendations to your students. So this book I was a little conflicted about, to be honest. I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't necessarily my taste, but I think it's important as a teacher to read books that are kind of outside of your comfort zone and outside of your taste, with the interest of finding books that would appeal to different groups of students. And I think over the course of my reading, I came to some important realizations about kind of pushing past my comfort zone as a reader and why that's important as an English teacher. So in terms of plot summary, it's going to be really difficult with a book like this. Jellicoe Road was complex. This book has even more going on. I would argue that it has too much going on. The pieces didn't seem to fit together as seamlessly as they did in Jellicoe Road, but I do want to give you just a quick overview of kind of the different components so you have a sense of what the story is about. I would say if you had to kind of boil it down to the key plot points, there are basically 2 main storylines. So storyline number 1 is about the protagonist. His name is Cullen Witter, and he's 17 years old, growing up in the small town of Lilly, Arkansas. He has a lot going on. That's kind of an understatement. As the book opens, he is forced to identify the body of his cousin Oslo, who dies of a drug overdose. So that's kind of the event that starts the story. Beyond that, he is striving for the attention of his father, who is away on the road a lot and doesn't really pay a lot of attention to him. He has an intense friendship with this kid Lucas, who has a lot going on in his past with his own family. He has a couple of kind of underdeveloped romantic entanglements with a couple of girls in town. He is very close with his younger brother Gabriel, who is this very pure, innocent, kind of cool kid. And he is just kind of struggling with those big life questions, trying to find himself and figure out who he is. So I would say that his story kind of hinges on 2 things, and I think they're juxtaposed together kind of in an interesting way. First is the disappearance of Gabriel, his younger brother. Disappears mysteriously, so most of the story is about him and his family coping with the disappearance of his younger brother. This is juxtaposed in a cool way alongside the reappearance of this woodpecker. And I know this sounds truly ridiculous, but there's this Lazarus woodpecker that apparently everyone thought was extinct, that some guy claims he saw in the woods outside of Lilly, and so that brings a lot of public attention to a town that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. So that's kind of Cullen's story. He's an interesting kid. He's kind of a cool kid, kind of a loner, very smart, kind of an aspiring writer. He keeps track of potential titles for novels in this book, but never actually writes any of them. He's constantly imagining these scenarios about himself in third person, often involving zombies, which I don't really get. I don't know, maybe it's a boy thing. I don't really get the whole zombie thing. But he's kind of an interesting narrator as far as narrators go. Now, as if that weren't enough to juggle, and it is a lot to juggle, there is actually a second storyline as well, and this is told in kind of alternating chapters. This storyline is really hard to summarize, actually. It's about basically another teenager named Benton from Atlanta who goes on a mission trip to Ethiopia through his church. And through this trip, he becomes weirdly obsessed with this apocryphal biblical book called the Book of Enoch. and he passes along this obsession to his college roommate named Cabot, who eventually becomes involved with one of the girls that Cullen is involved with, and that's kind of the hook between the two storylines. So there's a lot of really interesting kind of biblical exploration, biblical allusions going on in the story, which was very random, but also very intriguing. So that's kind of the summary, as best I can, of this novel. In terms of what you can use this book to teach, I think there are a lot of different things. Just like Jellicoe Road, I think it is important to expose students to books that have multiple plot lines, to teach them how to juggle and to balance those multiple storylines and to look for patterns and recurring motifs. I think it's also a cool book to talk about shifting narrative voice. Cullen often does go through these phases where he jumps into third person and imagines, or maybe imagines, it's not quite clear, all these dramatic scenarios about himself in third person. I think it could be really interesting to talk with students about why a first person narrator would suddenly shift into third person and how that kind of blurs the lines between reality and fantasy, and how the narrator is also kind of detaching himself from reality in a way. It's also a cool book to teach illusions. There are a lot of biblical references. There are some music references, I think, that would appeal to a certain group of students. There's a lot about Sufjan Stevens, which I thought was kind of cool. So I think it's a good book to teach illusions as well. So in terms of what kind of students I think this book would appeal to, I imagine this being really popular with hipster indie boys. I can picture them perfectly sitting in the back of class. These are some of my favorite students. These are the boys that sit in the back in their dark skinny jeans and obscure band t-shirts, and these are the kids who are constantly like rolling their eyes when ditzy cheerleaders make like meaningless comments in class discussion. These are the smart male readers, and I think that's exactly the group that this book would appeal to. And in fact, unfortunately, they're a very underappreciated group in literature, I feel. So this is a great book that would appeal to smart male readers. I didn't find myself personally connecting with Cullen as a narrator, but I came to a realization about 50, 60 pages in that it's not a good book, it's just not my taste. And I think it's really important to read and to be aware of books that are not your personal preference, because I do think this would appeal to those smart male readers that kind of are loners, kind of smart, kind of roll their eyes a lot and kind of want to do their own thing. This would be a great book for them. I think they would really connect with the narrator and a lot of the subject matter. So again, I think it's important as a teacher to really push yourself outside of just books that you would typically read, so that you can find stuff that would appeal to different groups of students. So that's my review of Where Things Come Back. Hopefully that hooks your interest, or gives you something that you can recommend to different groups of readers in your class. Up next week will be something that's really pushing me beyond my comfort zone. It's called Shipbreaker. It's gotten a lot of great reviews. It was a National Book Award finalist. It was a Prince Award honoree, I think in 2011. This is the next step on my never-ending quest to find cool, smart books for male readers. So hopefully this one will pay off, will be really interesting, and I will do a review of this one next week. So hopefully everyone's having a great week so far, and hopefully you enjoyed my second review video, and I will see you guys next time. All right, bye!